Welcome to Crafty Beach. This is Julie, and I have some fun coastal pumpkin projects for you today. But first, don't forget to subscribe, the bell if you'd like to be notified, and a thumbs up is always appreciated. Okay, I wanted to do some super easy coastal pumpkin DIYs. So this is the first one. I'm just going to start with one of these orange foam pumpkins at Dollar Tree and one of these little bath mats from Dollar Tree. Now this bath mat is like the color of sand, and it's like got a cool texture, so it kind of reminded me of sand. So that is what I'm going with this pumpkin. So the first thing I do is just poke a hole in the middle of the foam pumpkin on the top, and I'm going to pull up a corner and trim that off just to get rid of the excess material, and then just start stuffing it into the pumpkin. So here's the second corner, and I cut off the excess fabric, and I do the same thing and stuff it in there. Now, I struggled a little bit with this pumpkin because since it is a rug, it's a thin rug, but it was a rug no less. It had a lot of fabric, and so it was really kind of hard to get it close and tight with this little pumpkin the way I liked it. So I'm trying to trim as much fabric as I can. I'm trying to think about like what fabric will not be visible and trim those pieces off. And so I'm working here on the third side, and I trim it and stuff that into the little center hole. You want your center hole to be small enough where it will hold the fabric tightly, but large enough to hold everything that you're putting in there. So don't make it too big. So trimming off the excess fabric on the fourth flap here, and I'm trying to get it like super tight because I want it to retain the shape of the pumpkin that the little foam pumpkin originally had. And I'm stuffing that in there, and I'm trimming here because you can kind of see the two outside flaps there, how they're kind of sticking out a little bit, and I definitely want that to be tighter against my pumpkin. So I am trimming it as much as I can and reattaching that last side. And I'm still not really happy. I don't want like those flaps to be visible. I want it to be super tight. So I'm trying to just tighten that up as much as I can. And then I'm like, it's not tight enough. So I just take it off. I just take the four flaps out, and I'm kind of analyzing how I can get it a little bit tighter. So I'm gonna do the two small flaps here, and then my strategy on this one is I did the center, and then I did the two outside pieces and put that in, and then this one I'm gonna trim up a little bit to get rid of more excess fabric. And this one, I kind of did the opposite. I kind of like pulled the two outsides together, whatever you need to do. Trim off the excess fabric and push that in. And now we have a pumpkin shape, and I'm way happier with it. Now, I bought these little twigs off of Amazon, and I will try to post a link below. I live in Florida. I really have no twigs in my yard, but you can always use twigs too. But I thought they would make the perfect pumpkin stems. So I'm just going to put it in that existing hole. Now it's time to decorate our little coastal pumpkin. So I'm going to use some of this onion grass from the Dollar Tree. It kind of reminds me of like the grass on a sand dune at the beach. And I am going to just cut off some and try to put it down into that same hole. And just use the pressure of the stick being in there just to hold that in place. Just a little touch of grass. And then I'm kind of looking at my seashells. I got this package of seashells at Dollar Tree, and I'm just picking out a couple that I like and attaching that with just a little bit of hot glue to the top of our pumpkin. And just kind of play around with it until you get it exactly the way you like it. I really kind of like that blue one against the sandy color of the rug. And I'm going to glue on that second seashell. I kind of like the simplicity of that pumpkin. And I think we're all set. Okay, pumpkin number 2. This is another one of those foam pumpkins from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to use a white one this time because you might be able to see it through, and I don't want to use the orange. I have found them in orange, white, and black, but definitely orange has been the most common. And I got this beautiful chenille yarn from the Dollar Tree. It's super soft and it's this beautiful color. It's like a seafoam, like a mint color. And I am trying to tie a knot and not cut it too short. And I went around one way and then kind of went into an X pattern the other way. And then I just start winding and winding and winding. And basically I just want to try to cover every surface of the white pumpkin with that pretty blue yarn. Now this project was so simple and it turned out so pretty. I just love the color and I love the feel. It's almost like a super soft, like velour pumpkin is the end result. And I'm just kind of going around section by section trying to fill in all of the visible white parts with the yarn and trying to keep my overlap lines like kind of towards the center, but I'm working my way around and around and around until I cover all of the pumpkin. Now this would be harder, I think, if you did the orange because it might be peeking through. You might have to use more yarn, but since I did use the white, it was pretty forgiving. So I turn it over and I kind of look for any openings where you can see the white pumpkin on the other side. And I keep wrapping it around and filling in all those empty spaces. And basically just one piece of yarn. It took about a half, probably, of the yarn roll to cover it really well. And I think that looks good. So I'm just going to cut the yarn. And then I'm going to grab one of those little sticks from Amazon. And all I got to do is cut a hole right there in the center of the pumpkin while I'm holding that yarn. And then I'm going to use the little stick to hold the yarn in place. And I didn't quite cut the hole big enough the first time, so I'm making a little bit bigger hole. And wedging that little stick in there, and we have a stem for our pumpkin. Now I wanted to dress it up a little bit, so I'm kind of going through some of the things I have from the Dollar Tree that are beach and coastal, and I really like the contrast of the white on the blue. So I really like that little starfish. I got those there at Dollar Tree this summer in like the coastal section. They had at one of my Dollar Trees. And then I'm using some of that wire jute, and I just put it around a pen to make a little curly tendril for the top of our pumpkin. And I'm just going to wedge that in there in that same hole to hold that in place. And then I'm going to attach my little starfish with just a little bit of hot glue. A lot of those starfish were chipped on one leg, but not too bad. And then I'm like, I probably kind of want a shell for the other side just to decorate it. And so I'm kind of playing with the shells to have in my package to see which one I like better. This package of shells was really pretty. It had a lot of oranges and blues and whites. And sometimes the shells from the Dollar Tree don't look very good. But this package definitely had some really nice shells in it. I found one that I like, and so I'm just hot gluing that down. And we have our second coastal pumpkin DIY. Isn't that pretty? It's so soft. I love it. Okay, project number 3. I'm going to use another one of those foam pumpkins and one of these scarves from the Dollar Tree. And I'm using white again just because I kind of thought you might be able to see the orange through, but maybe not. The scarf is not that thin. Kind of measuring to see if it's going to be wide enough, and then I kind of cut how much fabric I think I'm going to need. It doesn't take very much of those scarves. You could definitely cover maybe 3 or 4 of these pumpkins with a scarf. And it's a little short going this way, but there's definitely enough fabric going the other way, so I think it's going to work with just one piece. So I'm just using a little bit of hot glue to secure that side to my pumpkin. You have to be really careful when you're hot gluing the styrofoam because of course the styrofoam wants to melt. So I just used a little bit just to hold the fabric in place and try not to aggravate it too much because I didn't want that foam to melt. And then I'm going to use all that excess fabric on the other two sides to try to cover up any white part there that is left exposed. So I'm just kind of gathering it together in like a little scarf ponytail there at the top of my pumpkin and trimming off the excess fabric. And getting it nice and tight. And this scarf was way easier to work with than that rug because it's thinner, and so I could get it tight to cling to the sides of the pumpkin. And I just put it inside the little hole I made in the top of the pumpkin. Kind of spread it out to make sure it's covering that half of the pumpkin. And then I'm going to do the same thing here on the other side. It's kind of like a little scarf ponytail there right on top. And cut off some of that excess fabric. I want to get it super tight and then just stuff the excess fabric into that hole in the top of the foam pumpkin. And then I just kind of spread it out to make sure that I'm covering all of that white part that was left exposed by the other two sides being a little too short. And perfect, one piece, and we have full coverage. And this is a really pretty color of blue. And I found this at most of my Dollar Trees, this scarf. And I'm going to use another one of those sticks from Amazon for a little pumpkin stem. They're just the right size for these little foam pumpkins from Dollar Tree. And they look way better than the little foam stems that come with it. Then I'm going to use a little bit of that wire jute. I'm going to make another one of those little curly tendrils by just wrapping it around a pen. And I am going to attach that to my stem by putting it underneath of it and kind of wedging that in. I have trouble with these things unraveling a little bit. In one of these projects, though, I figure out that I'm probably just using the wrong scissors because when I use those KitchenAid scissors, it did not ravel out like it does with the floral wire scissors. And so now it's time to dress it up with a few of those shells from the Dollar Tree. And I pick out a couple that I think go with it. Couple different shapes, and then I just attached those to the top with hot glue, and we have our third pumpkin. So we had the rug pumpkin, we had the yarn pumpkin, and this is the scarf pumpkin. I think it needs just a tiny last detail, so I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of Spanish moss and just attach that to the other side with a little bit of hot glue just to dress it up a little bit, just because the scarf was a little bit plain. And I love it. Now the next two pumpkins that we're going to do are going to be more like shelf sitters. So I'm going to start with one of these pumpkins from the Dollar Tree. These things are so popular. People are doing so many cool things with them. Every time I see them, I try to grab a couple because I'm like, I need more. Lots of people are just doing scrapbook paper, but I thought I would take it up a notch. So what I'm going to do is paint the back of it, the bottom of it, this agave chalk paint by Waverly, and it's kind of small, the lines to go in between those different panels of the pumpkin, and so I'm just using a little brush just to get in there. I'm not taping anything off or anything. It's pretty easy to stay on that level of the pumpkin because the other pieces are elevated and glued on there. And again, it's going to look rustic and coastal, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And there is a little hole in the top of the pumpkin, but I will take care of the stem, and so you won't be able to see that, so I'm not going to worry about it. So once I have all of the background in this beautiful agave color, I am going to start working on the panel parts. Now, I want to cover them with sand. I want it to look like a sand pumpkin, like from the beach. And the only kind of sand that I could find at my Dollar Tree is like a really fine white sand. So I thought if I stain the back of it with the Antique Wax by Waverly It's gonna make my sand look more tannish, more beach sand color than just the white sand. I thought the white sand was gonna be just too white. And so I am just using a foam brush and that Antique Wax by Waverly, and I am just carefully going over and staining those. If I get a little bit of that Antique Wax on the paint, it's no big deal. It's just gonna give it a little bit of distressing. So I'm not really worried about it, but I'm trying to be fairly careful. And this stuff is so easy. All you got to do is paint it on there, wipe off the excess with a paper towel, and you have some stained wood. Now, once I have it like that, it's kind of pretty like that too. I am going to start working on the sand. So I'm just going to use school glue. So this is just cheap school glue from Dollar Tree, and I am just brushing that on. I want it to be a fairly thick coat of the school glue, and I'm going to take that white sand from the Dollar Tree and just start sprinkling it all over that surface and kind of pat it down into that school glue. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the left and the right panels too. Glue all over, sprinkle it with sand. And I did put like a cutting board underneath of this because sand does kind of go everywhere, and that kind of contained the mess. And so this is our last section. I want a good healthy coat of that school glue. And sprinkling the sand on this side as well. And it worked. So I'm trying to pick up some of that sand that's on my cutting board and make sure that as much the area is covered with sand as possible. And kind of softly pressing that down into the school glue and then dumping off the excess again. And this is what we're left with, and it did kind of give it like that tan color. And I'm kind of cleaning up my edges to get the glue and the sand off of the blue parts of the pumpkin, which kind of exposes some of that antique wax around the edges, but I kind of like that. It kind of like makes it look a little bit more distressed. And I'm just kind of using the end of my paintbrush to try to get off any excess sand from where it should not be. And it's time to decorate this guy. So I'm going to use that existing hole just to go ahead and tie some of this jute twine from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to wrap around and around and around until I cover that whole stem. I go up to the top and then I come down to the bottom until you can't see any of the stem, and then just cut that off and just attach that to the back of my sign with just a little bit of hot glue. And twine on most pumpkin projects is the best way to cover those stems. I have a little bit area here that didn't have any sand stuck to it, so I just kind of tried to patch that with just a little bit of glue and a little bit more sand, and dumped that into the trash can and kind of fixed that area. And again, you're looking for rustic, you're looking for coastal, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And then I got a really long piece of that wire jute and wrapped that around my pen. And I'm just gonna wrap it all the way around my stem and then twist it off like that. And that's gonna give me 2 of those little curly tendrils. I love those for the top of pumpkins. I think they look very coastal. They go with the feel with the brown color, but it also gives you that little tendril like a pumpkin would have. And now it's time to dress it up. So I'm kind of getting some of the beach stuff I have from the Dollar Tree, seashells and such, to see what would look nice, what's like good coloring and the right scale. And then I'm just going to glue a couple of those seashells to the top, right there around the stem, just to decorate that little sand pumpkin. I wasn't sure if this project was going to turn out, but it did, and I really love it. Now I'm making sure that that glue and the sand is good and dry with my heat gun. And this is going to be a stand-up piece that goes on my shelf. And so I'm going to just make a super simple stand for the back of it. I'm just going to use one of these giant Jenga blocks that I got at Five Below. You can use whatever you have. And I'm just going to attach that to the back of my wood sign with a little bit of hot glue and project is complete. We have our sand pumpkin. So fun. Okay, so I got this little pumpkin at the Dollar Tree, of course, and it's not pretty. I like the shape, I like the stand, and so I thought I would cover it with something. So I found these beautiful blue pebbles at Dollar Tree, and they just reminded me of the beach. I love the color. Now, I went back and forth on what kind of glue to use, because I'm going to glue these pebbles all over the front of this pumpkin. And I decided to use this tacky glue. It's not a glue I use often, but it's like super thick. See how thick that is? And I thought that that would be a good glue to work with the pebbles. I didn't think I could probably work fast enough with hot glue to cover the whole piece. And so I decided to give this a try. So I had the center section really kind of saturated with that glue. And so I just sprinkled those pebbles all over. And then I'm going to go back in and paint more of that tacky glue around the edges so that I can glue the pebbles to that area too. The glue was so thick that it was a little difficult to even get out of the bottle. And I'm just sprinkling those little pebbles all along. Now, the finished project on this is a little heavy, but this stand is pretty secure, this piece from the Dollar Tree, and it does end up standing up just fine. So I'm going to do the right side here with some more tacky glue and try to fill up any of the areas that I haven't covered yet. And just fill that up with these little pebbles. Now, I think they have these in like several different colors. I really love this blue color. It really goes with my decor in my house and just feels very coastal and fun. So once I get those all glued on there, I am trying to dry some of that tacky glue with my heat gun. There was a lot of glue though, and it was super wet. So I'm kind of just trying to get a start here on the drying process. And then once I get it fairly dry, I'm going to try a different glue too, because I want to make sure that all of those pebbles are glued to each other and to the back. And so what I'm not going to use any more of that tacky glue. I'm going to use some of that multi-purpose spray glue from Dollar Tree. It comes in a little aerosol can like this, and I give it a very heavy coat of that glue on the top of it to try to hold all those pebbles together and make this piece stay together. Now the piece is just really saturated with glue at this point, so I was trying to give it a dry, but I realized that the only way this is really going to work is if I exhibit some patience and let this sit overnight. And so that is what I do. And once I did let it sit overnight, it was definitely solid and all the little pebbles stuck. So this is the next day, and I am using some of this nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. And the stem was not very long on this pumpkin, so I kind of cut the nautical rope a little too long. So when I get to the top of the stem, I just use hot glue to kind of finish that off. But then I use hot glue to keep kind of gluing it to itself to extend my little pumpkin stem to make it longer. And then I kind of make it skinnier and kind of make it go off to the side a little bit, just to make it a little bit more significant, because the existing like stem on there was just a little stubby. And once I get it a good length, I'm just going to use some hot glue and try to tuck that down in there and try to get any of my little stray strings pushed down in there. And I was happy with that stem. I think it looked pretty cool and solved the problem of needing a longer stem. And that's what it looks like. Now all we have left to do on this coastal pumpkin is to dress it up a little bit. And I have one of these little seahorses that I got in the coastal stuff at Dollar Tree this summer. And I was going to tie it on with that little hole around the top, but I kind of decided I liked it down at the bottom more. So I'm going to fill that hole in with just a little bit of spackle because this was a little wood ornament. And I am going to paint it ivory with this ivory chalk paint by Waverly. And it doesn't take much to change that natural color of wood to the ivory color. Once I have that painted, I'm going to give it a light distressing with some antique wax by Waverly. But first I'm going to need to dry it real quick. And I'm just going to go in and distress around the edges with that antique wax just to kind of make it look a little bit more weathered and a little bit more coastal. Now the stand of that pumpkin, is like the stained wood, so it kind of ties the little seahorse in with that as well and kind of covers that little hole that I had to patch as well. And once I got it on there and I kind of wiped off the excess with a baby wipe, and then I'm kind of just going around the edges again and making them a little bit darker just by going in around the sides to bring out all that detail on the sides of the seahorse. And then I'm just going to attach that to my pebbles with some hot glue. And I kind of like it down here on the bottom. I think that looks fun. Which means I'm going to have to find a couple more things to decorate this little coastal pumpkin. I'm trying to get it good and glued to those pebbles, so I did fill in a little bit of the open space there with hot glue to make sure that it was good and stuck since it wasn't a flat surface. Then I thought instead of like a pumpkin leaf, it would be fun to do like one of these fern leaves from the Dollar Tree, because that's going to give me a tropical beachy feel rather than like a traditional like pumpkin leaf. So I was going to go in with two. I kind of cut off the ends of two different ferns and I'm kind of playing with them, kind of seeing which one I like. Do I want to use two? Do I want to use one? And then I'm also going to use some of this wire jute from the Dollar Tree and wrap that around a pen to give me a little curly tendril. And then I decided I only wanted one of those little palm leaves. And so I like it kind of pointing up like that to the side. And then I'm going to attach the little tendril to the other side. And I think one of those leaves is definitely enough. Trying to figure out how to attach that. I end up going in and gluing it under that palm leaf that hides the end of it a little bit. It wasn't all the way glued down there at the end, so then I glued that down and glued that little curly tendril right onto there. Then I thought it needed one more touch. So I'm going through those shells that I picked up at the Dollar Tree and I'm trying to find just the right one. You can just put them on there and see what you think. Some of them were a little too colorful, but I thought this one was perfect. And so I'm just going to attach that with a little bit of hot glue. And that is all for our coastal pumpkins today. This is the final result. Aren't they beautiful? They're all so unique. We have our yarn pumpkin with the starfish. We have our sand pumpkin back here made out of that little wood panel pumpkin. I think this one looks like a pumpkin made out of sand, but it's actually a rug from the Dollar Tree. And this is our scarf pumpkin that we made. And this is the pebble pumpkin. I think they all are super unique. They all have like such a coastal flair, and they will be great for decorating my home for this fall. I hope you enjoyed these quick, easy coastal pumpkin DIYs using Dollar Tree. Don't forget to hit that like button. Comment which pumpkin was your favorite below, and don't forget to subscribe. I appreciate you. Until next time, bye.